Girls and women of Reddit, how old were you the first time someone made a sexually inappropriate comment to you? How did you react, and did it affect how you saw yourself or acted? 13 or 14. Guy in his early 20s comes to me, asks if I'm a virgin because he only dates virgins. Me being a shy timid person just stared at him and couldn't form any reply. Just froze on the spot. I was 7 when some weird-ass guy wanted me to show him the girls' changing room at the swimming pool. Luckily I had the common sense to go looking for my teacher. I was 11 when the normal harassment started with guys twice to thrice my age tried to hit me up and go out with me. The very first guy I remember trying to chat me up in the bus tried to convince me to tell him I was 18, when it finally sank in that I wasn't lying when I said I was 11. He had the graciousness to go completely white in his face and flee the bus at the next stop. I was 13 when a guy at the bus stop tried to convince me to go on a love weekend to Paris with him. He was easily 40. I was 12, at a barbecue my parents were having. I was in a bathing suit because we had a pool. A friend of my dad said he'd like to leave his wife there and take me home instead. I didn't say anything because I was so ashamed. I put clothes on and stayed in my room the rest of the party even though an adult overheard him and he was forced to leave. About 12. On my period, looking and feeling like shite. Simply walking home from the shops. Was wearing jeans and an oversized t-shirt. This asshole and his late 20-something-year-old friends start hooting their car, and hanging out the windows while catcalling me. Ignore it. When they suddenly come around again and drive slowly past me and they keep saying how sexy they think I am. I had a moment where I thought, oh god, this is how people end up getting kidnapped. There are 4 of them, and 1 of me. Even if I run I won't make it very far. Started walking faster, and eventually, I assumed that they got bored, and sped off. I basically ran home. I have similar incidents but this was the one that came to mind first. I was 12 years old, walking to the store with my 2 friends to get a Slurpee. We walked past a group of grown men and noticed they were all staring at us. As we passed, one of the men exclaimed loudly to his friends, I wanna cum on the blonde one's tits. 12 years old. I was 5. Was standing on jungle gym on the playground and an older boy came up to me and grabbed my spandex and underwear and stretched out my underwear and looked at my privates. I did not know how to use my voice or stand up for myself. I climbed off the jungle gym and sat under it and cried. I remember feeling so embarrassed and violated. I never told anyone. Just remembered that and will probably talk to my therapist about it. I was 13. I was at a bus stop, I ate a banana. An asshole, 40 to 50 came up to me and said I looked good with this in my mouth. I was so disgusted that I said I think I'm going to throw up. This offended him and he went away. Edit, thank you for your sympathy but remember I gave only 2 examples. If you wondering how I react today, 3 to 4 years ago I punched a guy who had grabbed my ass in the subway. By the way, I'm feel sorry for the women who had/have similar experiences. I was 7. I had this beautiful dress that had a full circle skirt and I spun around in it because how can you not when you're 7 and you love your dress? My uncle's friend, M, 50s, was there and he told MNE to spin again because he could see my underwear. I remember just feeling so gross and afraid. I told my mom and she was livid. We left and I was never allowed near that man. I also couldn't wear that dress afterwards without thinking about how that incident made me feel. It definitely took a little bit of my innocence away. I was 9 or 10 and a neighbor kid, 7 or 8 grabbed my ass one day while I was out playing kickball with the other neighbor kids. I didn't know what to do so I just went inside. Didn't even finish my turn. Did what I could to avoid him until we ended up in school again. Looking back, hate how young this happened at on both our ends. About the same age, one of my dad's friends made a comment about my chest and how much I looked like a boy and how he couldn't wait to see what looked like in a few years. Again, just avoided him after that. On a much better note, I, 27F, recently have found myself managing a bar where it's all regulars. One of them, R, M30, told another regular, D, M60, that we were going to hook up and D asks, yeah, but does she know that? and got R to back off without me having to say anything to him. It's honestly some of the alliances that really make a female's life easier. 12. Just some random guy in a grocery store. He said something like, "Was I happy that my boobs were coming in?" 7 or 8. My sister, 1 year older, and I had just gotten furry boots for Christmas and were wearing them out. 3 teenagers on bikes stopped us and started going off about how sexy we were in those boots and wouldn't let us pass. I remember being confused and scared. My sister, who was blonde, always got the worst of it though. She was raped at the age of 16 and was never the same since. That led to a downward spiral and eventually her death last year. A step-cousin asked to see what color panties was wearing. I was probably 6. I was a waitress at 15. A man I was serving said I should be in prison for the thoughts I've had about you. Never forgot that one. I was 12 and was babysitting my younger brother, 1 years younger than me, and took him to the park, and someone apparently assumed he was my son and told me to keep my legs shut next time. I had to ask a friend what it meant. It mostly just made me afraid of being a teen parent, and being publicly shamed. Edited to add, wow, this is clearly a common experience for so many people. Sorry to all of you who have also been victim to people's weird obsession with teen pregnancy and who feel their only possible course of action is to slut-shame children. 7. I insisted I have my own room and that I didn't want to share a bed with my mom, so she put me in a room with her scuba diving friend that was renting the room next to us. She obviously trusted him or something to put me in there. He would make comments about how I would grow up to have a nice body, a remark that I never understood because I was 7. I ended getting molested by that son of a bitch, and I never grasped what he had done until years later. Now I distance myself from older men. I grew up being wary of others. I was 8. I was helping my younger cousin onto her tricycle, so I picked her up, and as I was bent over from picking her up, some creep on a bike whistled at me and yelled, "I mommy." I was in pink shorts and a matching Winnie the Pooh shirt. My dad chased him down the street with a bat. Edit, I just remembered this one. Another time was when I was 9 and my cousins and I were swimming in a river in between 2 hills. Our parents were on one hill beaching and the other was too steep for anyone to climb up, so the only way you could get to the side facing the river was by going over the hill from the other side and hope to God you wouldn't slide down the hill and into the rocky river. Anyway, my cousins and I are splashing each other and being kids. I see something out of the corner of my eye and see this big fat white guy looking at us through binoculars. So me being a kid thought him having binoculars was cool, so I yell and point, "Hey look, he's got binoculars." And once I said that, took off pulling his pants up. When I was like 17 or 18, realized he was jerking off to us playing in the water in our swimsuits. Let it for those that are confused as to why I put the guy's race in the story, that is how my 9-year-old brain chose to remember him. We lived in a mostly Latinx community, so seeing this random pale white guy was not a common occurrence. The only white people I came across as a child was when we went to different cities or the teachers at school. Take it as you will. If this thread has taught me anything, it's that I as a parent need to pay close attention to how people interact with my daughter as she grows up. I feel like the listening to her and taking her seriously were a given, but I never considered having to watch how people watch her. So thank you, Op. I was 6 or 7, first or second grade. We had one computer in the classroom and it was blocked off with wooden panels to cut down on distractions. Principal came in and sat next to me as I was working on the computer. Didn't think anything of it. Then he put his arm around me and slid his hand in between my chest and arm like he was going to fondle my non-existent right breast. Before his hand got too far, I squeezed with all my might and got his hand to stop moving forward. He removed his arm, got up and left. I told my stepmom, but didn't understand what had happened, so told her it felt like he was trying to kiss me or something. She told Mel was wrong and being ridiculous, so I dropped it. Fast forward to having my own children, and when my youngest son was in 5th grade, 11, another boy asked him to suck his pee-pee. My son got in trouble because he kept telling the other boy he was disgusting, and of course the teacher never thought to ask why my son was saying that. I asked him why he said the boy was disgusting and my son told me. I was in the office the next morning and refused to let my son go to class until the principal understood that my boy had been sexually harassed and the other boy needed to be disciplined. I also demanded that the teacher apologize to my son. She was not happy. Moral of the story: listen to your kids carefully and daily. I was 7 years old. I was at a place called Health World. It was an exhibit about the human body that was really popular at the time. There was also a large group of high schoolers there with their school at the time. 6 boys tried to gang rape me in one of the exhibit halls when they thought no one was looking. They were all 15 to 17. It started with them making comments about my skirt, "That's a short skirt, little mama," and one of them backed me into a wall. It was a blur from there. I remember someone saying, "Hold her down, make sure she can't fight," and I started screaming for my mom and my cousin. The difference of time between my mother stepping away to get my cousin from a trash can, she threw up, and them trying this was like 5 minutes. They dropped me before they could get my clothes off, but I remember very vividly how horrible it was. I felt so violated and scared and dirty. I repressed how violent this encounter actually was, until my ex-BFF's mom slut-shamed me, saying, "You must be a little slut, after all those boys couldn't keep their hands off you at that museum." And yes, they were punished, but a teacher tried to actually defend them and tried to say it was my fault. Until my mom pointed to me, sitting on a chair in the corner, in my little pink skirt, my Little Mermaid t-shirt and my pink Winx Club sneakers. He still tried to keep defending it even when my mom pointed out she's 7 years old. How is it to any of you that trying to gang rape a 7-year-old seems like it was a perfectly appropriate thing? Is this what you're teaching them? That was as young as it got. I was 15 walking downtown with my best friend and her mother, and this older man, looked like he was in his 50s, walked past us, then circled back around to pass me again while saying, "MMMLD, love to use that ass as an ashtray. Put all my cigarettes out on that." I was shocked and scared. My best friend's mom jumped between me and him and cursed him out. I was wearing a dress that day. To this day, almost 20 years later, I'm not too comfortable wearing dresses in PUBL. I imagine for many girls and women, sexually inappropriate jokes were made when we were too young to understand how inappropriate it was. I was 12, and we were moving house. I was trying to get up in the mattress shelf in the van, and one of the moving men shouted he could see my panties, and that they were pretty. I threw them away. I was 9, and a random guy decided to say how nice my legs looked on the shorts I was wearing. I didn't say anything, just walked faster in order to get home. After that, I immediately started hating wearing shorts/skirts/dresses, and up to this day, I'm 21, I still feel self-conscious and uncomfortable when showing my legs. The first non-family member sexualization I can remember, I was probably 11. Some random dude whistled at me and then grabbed my non-existent, because I was prepubescent, ass. But the actual first one I remember, I was 7. He said, "As long as your tits are bigger than your stomach, you'll be fine." Then when I was 10, swimming in their pool, he said, "Don't you think it's time you start wearing a bikini? Gotta give the boys something to look at." He was my granddad. I blocked it out and didn't remember either event until I was around 18, when I found out he was still bathing my 8-year-old cousin, and that she would sleep in the bed with him while my grandma slept in another room. They claimed it was because my grandmother worked a different shift and didn't want to wake him up. I told my parents that needed to stop, and then told them about those 2 events in my life. Neither of my parents have really forgiven him for it. And I called CPS, and home visits were made. He stopped bathing her and she stopped sleeping in his bed. I still don't remember any time with him other than those 2 events. And I used to spend the night with them every weekend from birth until I was 8. I asked why I stopped, and my mom said I came home upset one day and told my parents I didn't want to spend the night anymore, but wouldn't say why. I'm almost 30 now and I am still uncomfortable around him. But I don't have any clear indication of why. I just trust my gut. I was 18 and working at a Wendy's over the summer. I've never experienced that much sexual interest from strangers, but somehow wearing that uniform made people treat me differently. I was bent over cleaning up a spilled salt shaker when I realized these boys about 13 to 14 were staring at my ass, bold as brass. I looked at them and one of them just said, "You're good at your job," in this shit-eating tone. Also that summer I was taking my 13-year-old cousin and his friends to the water park and one of them tried to hold me down and pull at my bikini top in the pool. Boys that age are the worst because they're old enough to think it's cool and funny but young enough to have no restraint. They start getting taller and stronger than you, but adults still think of them as kids and think it's funny that anyone would find them intimidating. I was like 12 walking home from school when some older guy whistled and said, "Hey babe." I just kept walking and thought nothing more of it 'cause dude was probably just drunk or being a dick in front of his friends. Back in elementary school, some boys used to pick on me by trying to say one of their friends had a crush on me, shortly followed by said boy bursting out with, "No way. She's so ugly." So I'm oblivious to most advances now because I never assume they're serious. Still, I'm pretty lucky to have only been through that. Other girls have gone through much worse. This wasn't my first one sadly, but it's the one that most affected me. I was 14, and went into the city for some shopping with my best friend. I was wearing my soccer letterman jacket, which I was super proud of. We were walking by a homeless man and he said, "The one in the red has nice knockers." It seems like such a little thing, but I began slouching to hide my breasts because they made me feel dirty. When I got a bilateral mastectomy due to breast cancer a few years ago, I remembered this incident once again and got so mad that someone had made me feel ashamed of my body, causing me not to appreciate it for so long. I was just so unprepared for a grown person to say something like that to me. I was 12 years old when a grown-ass man told me that I looked nice and fertile. Being the innocent kid I was, I didn't know what he meant, but it gives me a pit in my stomach every time I think about it. When I was about 7, a neighbor had a friend over, a guy I didn't know. He asked me if I wanted to kiss a frog on the mouth or a rabbit between the ears. Of course I said rabbit between the ears and he proceeds to pull the white pockets out of his jeans, holds them up and out, pushes his hips forward and says, "Well, start kissing." I didn't exactly understand at the time what he meant, but I knew it wasn't appropriate. The first of many times in my life. I'd forgotten about it until I was in a grocery store recently and this 50 to 60-year-old guy told a woman that her daughters are beautiful. The woman just said thank you and walked away. The kids were like 5 and 8. It really unduly bothered me, and when I was trying to figure out why, I remembered this and several other times I was young and older guys were inappropriate with me. It sucks. I'm sure literally every woman has a story. 6th grade, so 11 or 12. I developed early, and I was the new kid. A few of the guys in my class made a bunch of comments. I told them to stop, reported it to the teacher, got the "boys will be boys" response. After that, I didn't respond until one little douche decided to try to unhook my bra. Well, I'm a pretty easygoing person, but if you touch me, it's on. I grabbed that kid by his stupid little bangs and bashed his head into the wall until he got the message. I got sent to the vice principal's office, where I explained my situation, repeated harassment progressing to physical assault, all ignored by the teacher. Boy got suspended, I got left alone. I don't know, maybe 3 years old? That's when the sexual abuse started. I'm now 30, finally working through it. Woohoo, I was affected a lot, wet the bed till I was 13, I was oddly boy crazy, I thought creepiness was normal, married a guy who drugged me to have sex with me, was raped many times because I never learned how to protect myself. See the self-blame there? I have a lot of that too. I've hated my body, I've had severe depression, anxiety, PTSD, and thought I owed everyone my body. Happy news though, I'm now 30 with an amazing husband, 2 kids, and I've never been so happy. I feel fucking normalish and it's incredible. I have tough days, like today, thinking about how my mom handed me over to my abuser, bio dad, and I crumble a bit, but my family is so awesome now that they pick me right back up. Like middle school, I loved the attention because I somehow thought boys saying sexually inappropriate things to me was a form of flattery and that I was important/attractive. Fast forward to being a bartender, middle-aged men constantly say inappropriate things to me, it makes me extremely uncomfortable. However, if I offend them or tell them how uncomfortable it makes me, they get rude and insinuate they were just joking. I report it to the manager and they don't want to lose business, plus it's just the nature of the bar scene. I have to learn to pretend to be okay with middle-aged men making sexual advances at me and treating me like a piece of meat, because not only will I make a higher tip, but they'll return. If I get upset, I label myself as a bitch and rigid, lose money and future customers. One time a guy grabbed my ass and that was it. I couldn't deal with it. I flipped out. He insinuated I was making it up. Because he was rich and friends with the owner, he had no consequences. I was told just avoid him. And he was apologized to profusely by the manager to try and save face. Like I did something wrong? Of course it was his word against mine. That kind of thing makes you feel worthless. Truly. I was in 8th grade and I was wearing shorts cause it was hot out, and the boy that sat next to me and would touch my right shoulder and say, "Did you know that every rape starts with a touch on the right shoulder?" Or he would say something like, "Your thighs are so thick it's giving me a boner," and I always brushed it off. And now I'm 17 and it took me forever to realize that I was sexually harassed. I was 9, we invited some neighbors over for Christmas, and one of them said I looked sexy in shorts and patted my ass. Then I asked my mom if I could put on a jean, cause I felt so ashamed. I've got a very young face and I'm lucky to have gotten to 16 before noticing any comments. I was on the bus with my mom, she was visually impaired with various other health conditions, and a very intoxicated guy came and sat on the seat in front of us, and he was saying how gorgeous Lo was, and he kept trying to talk me into getting a drink with him at the pub. He got shut down, but he was still attempting to buy me a drink even after being told I was underage several times. Another time, myself and my mom were waiting for a bus at a stop close to a pub and 3 drunk guys came over to us, but one guy would not leave me alone and literally backed me into a corner and then promptly stumbled and fell within inches of me. Everyone there was mortified and he spent the rest of the time apologizing to me. I currently work in logistics and have to deal with a lot of drivers that could easily be 20-30 years older than me. I try to keep my interactions as brief as possible with them, then I still get the odd comment/creepy vibe from them. When I was younger, I tried my best to avoid being alone with guys, especially if they had been drinking. I went out of my way specifically to avoid being put in that situation. At work, I just get my manager or other male colleagues to deal with drivers as much as possible. I'm the only woman in my section, and they all keep an eye on me to make sure nothing happens and are always willing to jump in if I'll look uncomfortable. Growing older, I've realized I just need to stand up for myself and stand my ground, but also knowing when to get back up when needed. I was 10. I developed ahead of all my cousins and friends. It was our annual family cookout for the 4th of July and all the kids were running around in our swimsuits when my uncle grabbed my arm to stop me, looked me over, and cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. He then said, "This one already looks like a woman, all the boys are going to fall in love with that body." This made 10-year-old me believe that men would love you no matter what as long as you had a good body. Spoiler alert, it didn't turn out well. I'm better now, but it has taken years, and I'm still not where I want to be. I was 6 ish when I was first sexually abused, raped, and it lasted for years by many different men, all of whom lived in my house. I was a terrified kid then, and now I have PTSD. I am not really an exception to the rule either. It happens a lot more than you think and right under our noses every day. Please be vigilant with your children and teach them that adults are not always right. Not really a comment, more of an action, but in 6th grade a friend, also 6th grade, tried to play red light green light or whatever on my leg and had me tell him to stop whenever his hand got too high up my thigh. In 7th grade, an 8th grader did like a light karate chop or slap to my nether regions. Totally uncalled for, it was really random, and he said something like shoulda had a V8 or something. First one, 16, at my first job at a pizza place, early 90s. I was on my knees washing greasy little kid fingerprints off the glass door. My manager, a slimy-looking guy in his 40s, stood next to me, and when I sat back in my heels to ask him what he wanted, he said, "So while you're down there," and adjusted the front of his pants. I very calmly collected my purse and left on the spot. Second one, watching that horrible vanilla LCE movie at a friend's house, still 16. Guy in his 30s who was friends with the owners of the house stared at my chest the entire movie. I found myself alone with him for maybe a 2-minute snack break mid-movie and he said, "If you lost 5 pounds you could be a dancer in a titty bar." We grew up with this crap. We were told to just let it go, it's a compliment, you should be flattered. I'm so glad things have started to change. I wish I'd been encouraged to have a voice when I was a minnow. 8. I didn't understand the comment and just brushed it off. Shortly after, I was raped for 3 years by a family member. Then throughout all of high school comments were made. Basically made sex a negative. I've done a lot to fix that but the damage is still there. I was 11, the other girls started commenting on my breasts and bottom in the locker room, snapping knee bra straps, etc. It's not talked about a lot but there is a certain and specific kind of sexual harassment and shaming between young girls, specifically toward girls who are targeted for bullying by the entire peer group. I started changing in the toilet stalls to avoid the others. I joined a local theater company not long after, and got comfortable changing in front of people, even boys, because there was no other option and no one cared to look at anyone's body because everyone was in a rush to do costume changes. I still changed in that toilet stall at school, though. I was 11 years old. It was at a public swimming pool. I was wearing a normal childish swimsuit. There was a diving platform and my friends and I loved to jump. 2 older guys, seemed adult to 11-year-old me, stood at the side and let us pass. While I ran to jump one of them hit my bottom. I jumped and didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't know what to do. Not the first time, but the first one that really stuck. I was about 14-15 visiting my brother for his college graduation. My parents Andy walked to a small store down the street from our hotel after sundown. I was walking ahead of them when a homeless man yelled, "I want the one in the pink panties." I was wearing pink shorts. I didn't say anything and neither did my parents, they just blocked the man's view of me and we went about our evening. I was 5 or 6, at our family camp running around and being a little dingus. I had this shirt that had a ribbon tied on the front and it had become undone. A family friend came over, an old creepy dude, and leaned down to tie my ribbon. He taught me how to do a bow then said, "Someday you won't need the ribbon," there, and laughed. I remember being innocent enough that I wasn't fazed by this, but I went to brag to my mom about how I knew how to tie my shirt now and she appeared panicked when I told her who taught me. I didn't see that family friend around after that. I can't remember the first time but I do remember being around 10 or 11 and having to tell grown men that I had a giant boyfriend who would kill them if they didn't stop talking to me. I started wearing headphones in public constantly to avoid men trying to talk to me around puberty, so 10, 11. Maybe younger than that, when my mother had to tell me to sit in a skirt with my legs together because some dude at another table was trying to look up my skirt. I was so confused, why would someone want to do that? Not the first but the last comment I got which made me hella uncomfortable. I was on my knees putting my stuff on my backpack and my teacher goes out loud, "Oh, my name, on your knees? That's how I like it the most." Everyone kept staring at me confused and all my colleagues asked me why he had said so. I still don't know, I'm 16 BTW.